Well, hello everybody. This is my Craftsman router that seized up on me today, so I'm going to open it up. I'm pretty sure a bearing's gone out in it, and I'm going to see if I can fix it. I've probably had this thing 13 years or so, and it's done a lot of work, so I can't complain. So the first thing I'm going to do is just try to take the cord off of it if I can, just to get it out of my way. There's just a few screws on the side here. This might be helpful to folks, not necessarily a Craftsman router, but routers in general. If they seize up, take it apart, see if you can replace the bearing and put it back into service. I think originally I paid like $300 for this router. It's been good to me, and hopefully it will continue to do so. We're going to find out. See if I can crack this open without losing anything. Hopefully they're not soldered on there. Oh, missed one. Didn't see that guy tucked down in there. Oh yeah, they're just pigtailed on here with spade connectors. So I'll dig these out after I take a picture. Make sure I get them back where they came from. Alright, well, now I don't have to fight with the cord. I'm going to go ahead and take this guard off right here. Anything that I might break by manhandling this, just set that aside. And I know I'm going to be pulling this whole thing apart, so I'll probably go ahead and pull the motor brushes out. They're in right here. Probably spring loaded under here. Yeah. So one cap, one brush. This will be the left brush, so I'm going to set it over here beside me on the left side. Go ahead and stick my cap back on. And then take the other one out from here. That one's kind of rounded off. Try a flat screwdriver. There we go. This will be the right brush. Tons of life left in those. I don't think I've ever changed those. I could be wrong. No, I haven't. Like I said, I'm not real sure how it's going to come apart, but there are 4 screws here. I want to take apart as little as possible if I can. I'm going to try to sneak in here even though I don't have a straight shot at it. Yeah, looks like I'm going to be able to get them out. That one's not wanting to. Probably let this base down some. I know I've lubricated these rods before, but I don't recall how I did it. That's long-winded. Okay. I don't like that. Come up with a different solution. Alright, well, it's coming back to me. I went ahead and pulled this adjustment handle off. There's kind of a spring and a double nut situation in here to keep it from moving. You've got to get it just right to get it back together, but these should just, this whole bottom should just pull off. I think I need to get these boots off of here. Yeah, there's a couple of long springs. What else is in here? What is that? Some kind of a guide bushing or guide pin right there. So this will get set aside, put back on later. Now I can get in here. fly in here that is bugging me. All right, let's see here. Just winging it. See if this will massage off here. There's a snap ring right there, but I don't think I need to get that off yet. Should come off. Well, maybe I need to take that off, that snap ring. Well, I'll get my collet out of here and get that out of the way and see where we're at. Alright, well I was taking my collet out and then something caught my eye down in this hole. There looks like there's some kind of a fastener that's coming in from the end inside this handle. I'll be opening that up momentarily. You know, if things aren't coming apart, you know, pretty easily, brute force is really not the answer. You need to stop, really examine it before you do some damage. So I'll go into that momentarily. As well as these collets, you can see the screw sticking out the end here. They're actually left-handed threads, so you tighten to loosen. I am going to clean this nut up in this shaft and make it look new again, but need to get off on this side and see what's going on. I'm just going to shoot this in real time. Anybody who doesn't care to see it, tune out or skip ahead or enjoy. Trying to work as fast as I can to save some time. So far all these screws are the same. Yep. If they weren't plastic screws, I'd be putting them back in the same hole. I mean screws that go into plastic. I'd be putting them back in the same hole in which they came out of. Sometimes they don't want to go together that easily. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory there. There's a little spring on here. Don't want to lose that. And let's see, yeah, it's got something to do with this right here. I don't know if that is threaded in through here. You probably can't see it. It's poking out. It's not sticking out into there, but it's in there. And this is, oh, that's what that is. That's the lock. So when you plunge down, that will lock it in place on those shafts. I see a spring. There's a nut on the end, obviously. It looks like that might be a hex. Yeah. So let me find some tools and I'll start carefully taking this apart. Alright, there is a spring down in here, and mine, there's four holes actually. Mine's in the third hole up from the bottom. I guess you can set the tension on that if you don't like it, but that's where it was from the factory. So let's see what it's going to take to get this thing off. I'm not sure if it's right-handed or left-handed thread, so we're just going to go at it and see. Yeah. Just standard right-handed threads, and it wasn't even that tight. It appears that's an adjustment. Let me look down in here. A lot of this you can't see. Oh yeah. That's an adjustment. And this is actually pushing on a shoe that's in that hole. So I will have to reset this up. So anyway, let's see what it takes. You know what, maybe I don't need to take it all the way apart. Maybe I can just back that off and push that shoe up. No, it's not going to clear that casting. It's got to come out. Like I said, I'm just winging it, so it is what it is. Long-winded. There it comes. The washer right underneath it. That's a keyed shaft there. I'm going to try to pop that spring out. Of that hole if I can as I'm taking it out. Yep, there we go. There's a metal plate that I believe, yeah, it sits right there. Let me lay that down so you can see it. That metal plate laid right there in that plastic. I also kind of do these videos like this for my own documentation. And what's it going to take? Oh, that just screws out. Okay. There's some kind of a washer. No, that's like a snap ring on that. Okay. Okay, that actually is that. Where'd that shoe go? The shoe's actually down in there now. Okay. No big deal. I'll clean all this up and lubricate it before I put it back together. Now it appears that that guy is going to be able to come off there. Give it another. Looks like it might be budging. You know, there may be a screw in this side. I didn't look, because this side seems to be hanging up. I got to take this handle back off and see if there's something in there holding that together. Well, I don't know, guys. There's nothing down in here where I speculated there may have been something. I thought maybe they hid something over in this arena. So I went ahead and took the depth stop off. Nothing there. There may be something internal, you know, like this is kind of keyed in between the case halves. So I'm just going to keep going at it and take all these screws out of here and bust the halves open and see if we can get this thing apart. I know there's a solution in here somewhere. I'm just hunting for it. So I'll get this screws out here and then show you whatever I find. Alright, well, I've not cracked it open yet. It doesn't seem like I need to do anything here. I'm just going to start taking it open and see what we get. Okay. Well, I don't think I could have gotten it out anyway. That's the lock for the shaft. That must be a... Huh. That reads the RPMs right there off that. Yeah, somehow it's locked into this plastic. Well, I'm just going to see what happens when I start lifting on this. Okay. Something in here is holding me up. I may have to release some wires. That red wire right there needs to come off that motor brush. There may be an easier way, but as it stands right now, I'm not sure. Alright, well, I've stared at it for a few minutes and I think I figured out how to get it apart. I need to take this ring off the back here. There's a screw in the end of it that I didn't see. I'm not sure how. It's not even really tight. I'm not sure how it's on there. It's probably just slid on the end. Yeah. I don't know if this matters if it's marked for orientation in some way. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mark on here, and then one on the shaft, just to make sure I get it back in the way it came off. I'm assuming that's some kind of a tachometer or something that's reading RPMs. Who knows? If anybody knows that, let me know. And then I think I can just kind of start wiggling it out. Aha! Finally. Let me set some of this junk aside, and then we're going to go in and inspect those bearings. Alright, well, they do have some type of a rubber shield on them, which is good. I'm assuming, I've cut a lot of MDF, so it probably got down in there, but the back bearing feels a little bit stiff, but not really bad. But listen to this front one. That shouldn't sound like that. Now this bearing has a snap ring on the outside of it here on this shaft, and there may be one in the back, or it may be held in there in some manner. So rather than try to beat it out, I'm going to try to remove the shaft first so I can get behind this fan and see if there's anything there. I'm actually going to try to repack these bearings. I'm going to take it apart, clean it, inspect it, and if it's good, I'm going to repack it with grease and put it back together. I've done that many times. The grease gets contaminated, then they kind of overheat and everything starts gumming up and it spins down. Alright guys, well, I got it all apart. I'm going to go over the procedure that I used. I first took the snap ring off with my snap ring pliers that is in this groove right here. And at that point, rather than just try to drive it out because my shaft right here was really rusty, I put a little bit of 3-in-1 oil on it and came in with a green Scotch-Brite pad and just brightened it up a little bit and left a little film of oil on there. Then I took a dead blow hammer and kind of held it in between my legs and hit the shaft out through the bearing, and that's what I ended up with right there. I was correct that there was something holding the bearing in, which were these two Phillips screws right here. So I removed those. And then, because it has this extrusion sticking off right here, I laid it on a 2x6, and I used a brass punch, and I came around and knocked the bearing down. There's not enough room to get on the outside race to hit it out, which would have been my preference, so I had to carefully get it out that way. Now I find it interesting though, there's the, I can't remember what these are called, wavy washer right here to help keep some load on that. But there's actually two O-rings in here that are inside the race of that bearing when it's pressed on there. Very interesting there. So now I've got the bearing out and it is crusty. So we're going to pop the seal off and take a look at the inside. Alright, well, I'm going to pick the seal out of this bearing. I've just wiped all the gunk off and kind of got down in the groove right here with a really sharp pick. Cleaned it all out. If you're very careful, you can get right underneath the lip right here and massage that seal out of there. And it's starting to pop up. Now I'm just going to work around it, turn the bearing, and pop that seal right off. Now it's been hot, I can tell. You can maybe see the bluing in here for a good portion of it. Now to get the other seal out, depending on the bearing, sometimes you can come in with some tool like this and get to the other side of it and just push it out. In this case, it doesn't seem to want to go. Oh, there it goes. Starting to pop up. Now I'll take my pick and I'll pull this seal off. There we go. And it is bone dry in here. There is nothing in there but some gunk. And that does appear to be MDF that did get in there. So I'm going to clean the seals up. I'm going to clean the bearing up, get all the gunk out of it, and then I will see if I think it is salvageable. Alright, well, I've got the seals and the bearing all cleaned up. It's really not that bad, so I'm going to run with it. This is a 6004V NSK bearing, just for reference, but I'm going to go ahead and show how I would repack one of these. The first thing I'm going to do is take a Q-tip and dip it in my multi-purpose grease. And I'm just going to put a light film on the inside of the seal right here, on both of them. And then I'm going to install one of the seals. Just kind of have to work it around with your fingers and it will pop in there. And there we go. Making sure that that inner lip is right where it should be. And that looks good. And I'm going to take a small screwdriver like this, get some grease, and I'm going to pack in about 1/3 of the bearing. You don't want to totally go full with this. It's going to take me a minute to do this, but I'm just going to pack this in there and then we'll move on. Alright, well, I've packed about 1/3 of it with grease. I'm going to go ahead and spin it and kind of work it in. Just like so. Wipe off the excess around this top. And then I'll install the other seal. Just kind of lining it up and pushing it down in there, ensuring that it does go. I can see that this lip is not really down where it's supposed to be, so I'm going to push it down lightly with this pen. Make sure the other side is looking good, and it is. Quick wipe down here, and then I'll see how it feels. It feels really nice. You know, I would recommend changing them over what I'm doing here, but this is just an idea on what you can do if you can get the seals off to repack your bearings. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and pull this rear bearing off and give it the same treatment, even though it felt okay. I've got the Harbor Freight bearing separator and puller set installed here, and this is a great inexpensive tool for things like this. So I'm going to start wrenching this bearing off, and you heard that crack right there. It broke loose from the shaft. If they get too tight, you just simply need to wrap it on the end down here with a hammer, and that'll help shock things loose. So I'll just continue working this. That fan is snagging on my towel, so I'm holding it up in the air, and this will break free here shortly. It's coming off really nice. It's actually pressed on the whole shaft. That must be all the same diameter. I wasn't expecting that. Try to hold it this way. Might be a little easier. And I'm actually running out of room right here, so I need to stop and find something to put in there. Alright, well, that's the first time I've run out of room on something like this. Usually the shafts are a different diameter, so I installed a little socket right here, as you can see, and then I'm going to go ahead and press it off the rest of the way. Just about there. And there we go. So there's the bearing from the back of the shaft. I'm going to do the exact same treatment like I said. I'm going to pull the seals, I'm going to clean it out, repack it, and put it back together. Alright, well I've cleaned this bearing up using the exact same treatment, and it does feel brand new. One thing I'm going to do here is this commutator is a little bit blackened out, as you can see. I'm just going to simply come in with a little piece of this gray Scotch-Brite pad and clean this up and make it nice and shiny. You can see the difference there already. I'm going to work on this for a bit, then we're going to put the bearings back on and we'll move on. Alright, well I've got the commutator cleaned up, as you can see. I'm going to flip it around and address the shaft right here. It's pretty much rust free, but there is still some on it. So what I'm going to do is use phosphoric acid to eat that rust away using a Q-tip. I've got my jug here, you can't see it. I'm just going to dip it into the acid. So I've got my Q-tip saturated. I'm going to stay away from the O-rings and stay away from the threads. And I'm just going to coat this with this phosphoric acid, and it's going to eat that rust away. It's already doing it, as you can see. And then once all the rust is gone, I will wipe it off and with some mineral spirits. And then I'll come back with a fine gray Scotch-Brite pad and brighten this back up. And then I'll put just a light coating of like 3-in-1 oil on it. You can see what I'm getting off already. It's going to take a few minutes for this to take effect, but I'll show you the end results. Alright, well it's virtually rust free right now, as you can see. There's still a little bit of acid on here. I think I applied this twice, so I'm just going to give it a little wipe down to get the majority of the acid off, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of tissue with some mineral spirits and just wipe off anything that may be still on here. Just like so. And then, like I said, I'm going to come in with a little gray Scotch-Brite pad and start brightening this up. Alright, well I've cleaned it up with the Scotch-Brite pad. You can see how it's looking good right now. I'm going to come in with just a little bit of mineral spirits here. Wipe it down. Just like so. Then I'm going to come in with a little bit of Brasso. Put a little bit on my tissue here. Just a little bit. And then work this in here. Trying to stay away from everything that's important, like the O-rings. There we go. And then I will just work this in a little bit. And I will do this a couple of times, just by hand. You can see how good it's looking right now. Alright, well I've worked on it with the Brasso, and you can see how nice it's looking right now. I'm going to come in with just a tiny bit of mineral spirits. and clean this shaft off. And then put just a little bit of 3-in-1 oil on here, just to act as a rust inhibitor. So from rusty to this, that easy. Alright, I stayed up too late last night getting another start at this. I've got my separator set up here to act as a press. You can see how I'm using the 2 bearing plates to press this bearing back on the shaft. Lightly lubricated with a little 3-in-1 oil. Go ahead and start taking this on by hand if I can. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to be able to do it by hand most of the way, if not all. Just making sure it's looking good. It's getting tight on me. Just about there. And there we go. Looking good. Alright, well I went ahead and installed this bearing. I just supported this with a block of wood and then tapped around the outer race with a brass punch and seated that in there, and then reinstalled those 2 screws which locks the bearing in the hole. I've also lubricated this shaft as well as the O-rings, so I need to get this back on here. I'm going to attempt to hold it in my hand like this and then strike it down. That actually went in a lot easier than I anticipated. Sounds much better. I need to install the snap ring back on there. Then we'll be moving along. Alright, well I didn't realize how long this video was actually running, so I'm going to try to speed things up a little bit. Only kind of show parts that are maybe important. Just trying to get this back in here. This bearing's got to sit down in this little groove in the plastic. Looking good. Then I need to install this back on the end down here, lining up my marks. I'm going to have to lift it back up a little bit. There we go. So I'll get this tightened up and we'll move on. Alright, one last visual inspection, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Looking good. Just going to install the other half of the case, install all the screws and tighten them up. Alright, well I've put a very, very light film of grease on these 2 rods here. I'm going to attempt to put this back on where it goes. There we go. I need to reinstall this mechanism here to hold that in place. This is the one that's a little tricky. There's a little spring that goes in here, and then this nut as well, but you have to get the nut on first. So I'm just going to push this up and run the nut down to give me some thread on the top to work with. That's too much. I am actually doing this wrong. Like I said, shooting in real time here. Need it something like that, I believe. What you've got to do is find the spot where it's going to thread together, but this nut needs to be up in that hole in this slot right here. So that's too much, so I'm going to back this nut off and then press it on and start twisting this on. And I'm not getting full engagement here, so it's still not right. So as soon as it pops off, I'm going to move back a couple flats and then stick it back on. And it's still almost right. Just popped off. Move it 2 more flats. See how that one looks. Still want to do another one. Another flat or 2. I'm going to go 2 flats. See what I mean? You have to just kind of get it right. Still not quite there. Just popped off. I'm just trying to move that nut closer up in there. Okay, that looks good. Alright, well, I've installed the dust booth as well as the depth stop. I'm going to work on putting this locking mechanism back together in real time here because it's got to be done in just such a way to make it work properly. The shoe is in here, that little brass shoe I was talking about. I'm just going to simply thread this all the way in until it stops, but you cannot just leave it there. This turning is what in turn pushes that shoe to that shaft and locks it in place. So holding the handle up here, you can see the orientation of this particular slot. I'm just going to rotate it backwards till that lines up, and that's going to allow it to move back and forth, just a small amount. The spring is the most difficult part, but I've come up with a way to do it that I'm going to go ahead and show here. I've got to get it in the hole where I had it. It's difficult for me to see. Mine is the 3rd hole up. Come on. Get in there. There, okay. 3rd hole up. Now I'm going to take this pick and I'm going to hook that spring right there on the other side. Hopefully you can see I've got a hold of it. See how I can kind of pull it around that shaft. Lost my position here, but it goes right there. Now I'm going to drop this spacer on right there. Now I'm going to start putting the handle on. Okay. Now I'm going to bring my pick around this plastic while pushing down on the handle. And you can see I just snapped it over there, right there where it belongs. So now that's just the way it should be. Now I'm going to take this and run it all the way in, just till it contacts that shoe. Okay, and I've just contacted that. Now I'm going to push this up and pull this. And you can see right there it seems to be just fine. I can release it, pull it. If anything, it might be a little bit snug. So I'm going to back it off just a tad and run that nut up with my fingers and test it again. See how the handle is not staying in? It's too loose. So I probably had it more correct to begin with, so I'm just going to take it back up to where it stops. That actually feels good right there. So without turning that bolt, I'm going to lock this down right here. And give it a final check. Looks pretty good. Okay, well I was moving along and something wasn't right with this handle. I couldn't quite get it adjusted properly, so I did look in the manual and they did describe a procedure. I'm going to go ahead and mess it up and show you that procedure. So now we've got no adjustment on it at all. You're actually supposed to take this handle and line it up right here with this part of the case and just hold it there. And then just slowly come in until you just contact that shoe right there, just light contact. Now I'm going to hold this and lock the nut back in. There we go. And now I'll test it. The problem I was having was the release mechanism right here was not pushing this handle out and releasing the tension. Alright, now I'm moving along. I'm going to go ahead and install the release button here, making sure the spring is on it. The spring actually needs to rest on a small land right here. Maybe you can see that. It's kind of difficult to put everything together. You've got to get the spring just in the right spot, keep your fingers out of the way, and then try to put the outer case of the handle on, getting everything lined up. You've got to get it just right or it just does not want to go on there. Okay. There. Now it's releasing like it's supposed to. So I'll get all the screws installed and tighten up here. Alright, well I've installed the cord, the guard, whatever else may have been on it. That factory adjustment procedure works great. Make sure my spindle's unlocked. Got it plugged in. I'm going to start off on slow speed here. It might get loud. I'm going to ramp it up. So here we go. Well, it certainly sounds good to me. I think the last piece of my puzzle is to clean this rusty piece up. I'm going to hit it with some phosphoric acid like I did the other and probably do a bluing treatment on it. I'll show the results when I'm finished with it. Alright, well here's the collet nut de-rusted and blued again. I use this Birchwood Casey Super Blue. This is probably 3 applications here to turn it that black. Not perfect, but certainly looks better than it did. Thanks for watching, guys, and good luck.